My daughter postponed my birthday to next year to save money. The next day, she bought a new $2,000 purse. The cold glass slipped from my trembling hands and shattered on the hardwood floor, just like my heart did that morning. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. I am 73 years old, and I live in a small, sunlit apartment on the third floor of a weathered brick building in Astoria, Queens. The morning light filters through my kitchen window, casting shadows across the yellow Formica table where I sit with my coffee every dawn. The faint hum of traffic on Northern Boulevard mingles with the smell of roasted coffee beans wafting from the Greek deli on the corner. Every morning, I rise before the sun, dragging my aching joints to that same window, hoping, just hoping, for something different. But the days fold into each other like origami birds, each one looking exactly the same. The cracked coffee cup that I refused to throw away because it was a Mother's Day gift from 20 years ago. The muttered excuses I make to myself about why nobody calls. The empty chairs around my small dining table where my family once gathered for Sunday dinners, back when they still needed me for more than just money. My apartment is clean but tired, like me. The walls are painted a soft cream color that has faded to something closer to old paper. Photographs line the mantelpiece above a radiator that clangs like an angry ghost every morning at 6. Pictures of birthdays, graduations, holidays. Pictures of when my daughter Sarah still hugged me tight and meant it. When my granddaughter Emma would climb onto my lap and fall asleep during our movie nights. I keep these photos dusted and arranged just so, because looking at them is sometimes the only way I remember that I was once important to someone. That I once mattered. Last Tuesday morning was different, though. Not because anything good happened, but because something inside me finally cracked wide open, like that glass hitting my kitchen floor. The phone rang at 7:30. Sarah's voice was already rushing, breathless, the way it always sounds when she's about to ask me for something or tell me something I don't want to hear. "Mom, listen, about your birthday next week." She paused, and in that pause, I felt my stomach drop. "We're going to have to postpone it." I set my coffee cup down carefully. "Postpone it?" "Yeah, just for a while. Money's really tight right now, and we can't afford to take everyone out to dinner. Maybe next year when things settle down." Next year. Next year, I would be 74. Next year was an eternity away, and we both knew it. But what she didn't say, what hung in the air between her words, was that my birthday wasn't worth the expense. That I wasn't worth the expense. "I understand," I heard myself saying, because that's what I always say. That's what I've been saying for the past 10 years, ever since her father died and left me alone to navigate this strange new world where my own child sees me as a burden instead of a blessing. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the calendar on my refrigerator. October 15th was circled in red marker, the way I circle all the important dates. Sarah's birthday. Emma's birthday. Christmas. My birthday used to be there too, but I noticed she never asked about it anymore. Never planned for it. Never seemed to remember it was coming until the last minute, when she would send a generic card with her signature scrawled hastily at the bottom. I got up and made myself a second cup of coffee, even though the caffeine makes my hands shake. I needed something to do with them, something to keep them busy so they wouldn't reach for the phone to call her back and tell her that it was okay, that I understood, that I didn't need a celebration anyway. But it wasn't okay. And I was tired of pretending it was. The next morning, Wednesday, I was walking back from the grocery store with my small cart of essentials, milk, bread, bananas, the generic brand of everything because that's what my social security check allows, when I saw Mrs. Ortiz from downstairs standing by her mailbox with her phone in her hands. "Morning, Elena," she called to me, the way she always does. Maria Ortiz is 75, 2 years older than me, but she moves through the world like she still belongs in it. Her hair is silver and always perfectly styled, and she wears lipstick even just to check the mail. "Morning, Maria." I was fumbling with my keys, trying to balance my grocery bags, when she held up her phone. "Look at this," she said, her voice excited. "My granddaughter just posted pictures from her shopping trip in Manhattan. Look at this purse she bought herself." She showed me the screen, and I politely looked, the way you do when someone wants to share their family's good news. It was a handbag, black leather with gold hardware, the kind you see in the windows of those fancy stores on Fifth Avenue. $2,000, Maria said, shaking her head but smiling. Can you imagine? $2,000 for a purse. But she works so hard, she deserves nice things. $2,000. The number echoed in my head as I climbed the stairs to my apartment. $2,000 was more than I spent on groceries in 4 months. It was more than my rent. It was more money than I had ever spent on anything for myself in my entire life. But it wasn't Maria's granddaughter's spending that made my chest feel tight. It was the resemblance. The same dark hair, the same smile. The same age as my Sarah. I set my groceries on the counter and pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. I hardly ever use social media, but I have Facebook because that's where Sarah posts pictures of Emma, and it's sometimes the only way I see what my granddaughter is doing. What she looks like now. Whether she remembers me. I typed Sarah's name into the search bar and clicked on her profile. The most recent post was from yesterday, Tuesday. The same day she called to cancel my birthday. There she was, smiling brightly at the camera, holding up a designer handbag. The same black leather with gold hardware that I had just seen on Maria's phone. The same $2,000 purse. Treated myself today, the caption read. Sometimes you just have to splurge on the things that make you feel good. Love my new baby. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered onto the linoleum floor. I stared at it lying there, the screen still glowing with my daughter's happy face, her $2,000 indulgence, her celebration of spending money that apparently existed for everything except her mother's birthday. Sometimes you just have to splurge on the things that make you feel good. I sank onto my couch, the same faded blue velvet sectional that I've had since Sarah was in high school. The cushions are worn from decades of family movie nights, homework help, late-night conversations about boys and dreams and the future. Now it's just me here most evenings, watching the news and wondering when everything changed. When did I become the person who wasn't worth splurging on? When did my birthday become the expense that needed to be cut? When did my daughter's happiness become more important than my dignity? I pulled out the photo album I keep on the coffee table, its pages filled with memories that feel like they belong to someone else's life. Here's Sarah at 5, gap-toothed and giggling as I push her on the swing at the park near our old house. Here she is at 16, rolling her eyes but smiling as I insist on taking pictures before her prom. Here's her college graduation, and mine is the face beaming proudest from the crowd. Here's her wedding day, and I'm the one who paid for her dress because her father's life insurance money was already running low. Here's Emma as a baby, and I'm the one holding her in the hospital while Sarah recovers, the one who moved in for 2 weeks to help with the night feedings and the laundry and the endless stream of visitors who wanted to see the new baby. Here's Christmas 3 years ago, the last time the whole family came to my apartment for dinner. I spent days cooking, cleaning, preparing. I used my emergency savings to buy gifts for everyone, especially Emma, because I wanted her to remember her grandmother as someone who made Christmas magical. But in every photo from that day, I can see it now. The way Sarah checked her phone during dinner. The way her husband barely looked up from the football game on TV. The way Emma played with the expensive electronic tablet they had gotten her instead of the handmade dollhouse I had spent months crafting. I was already becoming invisible, even then. I just didn't want to see it. The memories keep flooding back as I turn the pages. Every sacrifice I made seems so clear now, so obvious, like a pattern I was too close to recognize. When Sarah's car broke down during her senior year of college, I took out a loan against my house to pay for a new engine. When she needed money for the security deposit on her first apartment, I gave her the cash I had saved for my own vacation, the first real vacation I had planned in 20 years. When Emma needed money for summer camp, for dance classes, for the expensive sneakers all her friends were wearing, I was the one who said yes, even when it meant eating generic soup for dinner and turning my heat down to 60 degrees all winter. "Mom, you're a lifesaver," Sarah would say, hugging me tight. "I don't know what we'd do without you." But where was she when I fell and sprained my ankle last spring? I called her from the emergency room, scared and alone, and she said she was sorry but Emma had a soccer game and they couldn't leave. I took a taxi home and spent 3 days unable to walk properly, heating up canned soup and sleeping in my recliner because I couldn't manage the stairs to my bedroom. Where was she when I had that chest pain scare in July? When I spent the night in the hospital hooked up to monitors, and the nurse kept asking if someone was coming to pick me up. I called Sarah, and she said she would try to stop by in the morning, but she never did. I rode the bus home in my hospital gown under my coat, carrying my purse and my discharge papers like flags of my own abandonment. Where was she last Christmas when I spent the day alone because she decided they were going to her husband's family instead? She called for 10 minutes in the afternoon, and I could hear the sounds of laughter and conversation in the background, the warm chaos of a family celebration that I wasn't part of. "Next year we'll definitely do Christmas at your place, Mom," she had promised. But next year came, and there was always a reason why it couldn't be at my place. Too small. Too far. Too inconvenient. Always too something. I closed the photo album and sat in my quiet apartment as the afternoon light faded. Outside, I could hear the sounds of families coming home from work, from school, children laughing in the courtyard below. Normal sounds of normal lives where people take care of each other instead of just taking. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about that purse, about the casual way Sarah had splurged on herself while telling me my birthday wasn't in the budget. I kept thinking about all the times I had put her needs before my own, all the times I had said yes when I should have said no, all the times I had given until it hurt and then kept giving anyway. I thought about the last time she had asked me for money. Just 3 weeks ago. $500 because her credit card bill was higher than expected. "Just until payday, Mom," she had said. "You know I'm good for it." But she wasn't good for it. She never paid me back anymore. It had become an expectation instead of a favor, a right instead of a request. Somewhere along the way, I had become her personal bank account, always open, never closed for business. I got up at 4 in the morning and made myself coffee in the dark. I sat by my kitchen window and watched the city wake up, the early commuters hurrying to catch buses, the delivery trucks rumbling down the street laden with goods for people who could afford them. When had I become someone who couldn't afford anything? When had I become someone whose needs didn't matter, whose birthday could be postponed indefinitely, whose happiness was expendable? I had raised Sarah to be strong, independent, successful. I had worked 2 jobs for 15 years to make sure she had everything she needed for college. I had cleaned office buildings at night after serving tables all day just so she wouldn't have to take out student loans. I had sacrificed my own education, my own dreams, my own future so she could have hers. I had given her everything, and somehow along the way, she had learned to take everything without giving anything back. The sun was fully up by the time I made my decision. I was going to call her. Not to yell, not to make demands, but to tell her how I felt. To explain that her actions had consequences, that her mother had feelings too, that love wasn't supposed to be a one-way street. But when I picked up the phone, I realized I didn't even know what to say. How do you tell your own child that they've broken your heart? How do you explain that their carelessness has made you feel worthless? How do you ask for the basic respect that should have never needed to be requested? Instead, I set the phone down and went to get dressed. I had a life to live, even if it felt empty. I had errands to run, even if they were just for myself. I had a day to get through, even if nobody else cared whether I succeeded. But before I left the apartment, I did something I had never done before. I walked over to the small wooden box where I keep my emergency money, the cash I've been saving for years, folding up $20 bills and hiding them away for some unnamed crisis that might someday require them. I counted out $200. $200 that I was going to spend on something for myself. Something unnecessary, something indulgent, something that would make me feel good. If Sarah could spend $2,000 on a purse, surely I could spend $200 on whatever I wanted. I didn't know what yet. But for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was going to put myself first. The revelation felt both thrilling and terrifying. I was 73 years old, and I was finally going to learn how to be selfish. I walked to the small beauty supply store on Ditmars Boulevard that I had passed hundreds of times but never entered. The windows were full of bright colors, lipsticks, nail polishes, perfumes, all the small luxuries that make a woman feel like herself instead of just someone's mother, someone's convenience. The young woman behind the counter smiled when I walked in. "Can I help you find something?" "I want to feel beautiful," I heard myself saying. The words came out before I could stop them, and they sounded so desperate, so raw, that I almost turned around and left. But she didn't look at me with pity or judgment. She looked at me like she understood. "Let's start with skincare," she said gently. "When's the last time you did something nice for your skin?" I couldn't remember. Years, probably. I had been using the same drugstore moisturizer for decades, the same generic soap, the same practical products that served their purpose without bringing any joy. She led me around the store, explaining different products, showing me colors, asking about my preferences. It had been so long since anyone had asked me what I wanted, what I liked, what would make me happy. I bought face cream that cost $40 and smelled like roses. I bought lipstick in a color called Confident Red that made my eyes look brighter. I bought perfume in a small crystal bottle that felt precious in my hands. When I got home, I spent an hour in my bathroom trying everything on, looking at myself in the mirror like I hadn't done in years. The face looking back at me was older, lined, weathered by 7 decades of living. But it was also mine. It was the face that had raised a daughter, that had survived widowhood, that had carried me through countless small heartbreaks and small victories. It was a face worth celebrating. A face worth spending money on. A face worth loving. That afternoon, my phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time in years, I considered not answering. I considered letting it go to voicemail, letting her wonder where I was, what I was doing, whether I was okay. But old habits are hard to break, and I answered on the 4th ring. "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded distracted, like she was multitasking. "Listen, I need to ask you a favor." Not "hello, how are you?" Not "how was your day?" Just straight to the favor. The request. The need. What kind of favor? Emma's school is doing this fundraiser, and they need donations for the silent auction. I was wondering if you could contribute something? Maybe like $200? I know it sounds like a lot, but it's for a good cause, and, no. The word came out of my mouth before I had even decided to say it. It hung in the air between us, sharp and unfamiliar. "What?" I said. "No, Sarah. I can't give you money for the school fundraiser." "Why not? Is something wrong?" Are you having money problems? The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. Was I having money problems? I was living on Social Security and a small pension from the diner where I had worked for 30 years. I shopped at the discount grocery store and clipped coupons. I turned my heat down in the winter and my air conditioning off in the summer. I wore the same clothes I had bought 10 years ago and got my hair cut at the beauty school where the students practiced on willing volunteers. But she was asking if I was having money problems, while she carried a $2,000 purse. I'm not having money problems, I said carefully. I'm having priority problems. What does that mean? It means I'm tired of being treated like an ATM with feelings. It means I'm tired of my needs coming last in my own life. It means I spent $200 on myself today, and it felt better than any money I've ever given you. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, could picture her face, the way it looked when she was trying to process information that didn't match her expectations. Mom, I don't understand what's gotten into you. We've never asked you for money you couldn't afford to give. Yes, you have. You've just never cared enough to notice. That's not fair. We appreciate everything you do for us. You know we love you. Do you? Do you love me, or do you love what I do for you? Another silence. Longer this time. I think you're being dramatic, she said finally. And honestly, I don't have time for this right now. Emma has piano lessons in 20 minutes, and I need to get her ready. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my kitchen holding the silent phone, and instead of feeling guilty or sorry or desperate to call her back and apologize, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Relief. For the first time in decades, I had told my daughter no. I had put my own needs first. I had refused to be taken for granted. And the world hadn't ended. That evening, I took a long bath using the expensive body wash I had bought that morning. I put on my new lipstick and sat in front of my bedroom mirror, really looking at myself for the first time in years. I had been so busy taking care of everyone else that I had forgotten to take care of myself. I had been so focused on being needed that I had forgotten to need anything in return. But I did need things. I needed respect. I needed consideration. I needed to be treated like a person instead of a resource. I needed to remember that I mattered too. The next few days passed quietly. Sarah didn't call, and I didn't call her. I went about my routine, grocery shopping, cooking for one, watching my evening programs, but something had shifted. The activities were the same, but I felt different doing them. I felt like myself again, instead of just somebody's mother. On Friday, Emma called. My granddaughter's voice was small and confused. Grandma? Mommy said you're mad at us. My heart clenched. Emma was 12 years old, caught in the middle of an adult conflict she couldn't possibly understand. This sweet child who used to spend weekends at my apartment, who would help me bake cookies and play board games and fall asleep on my couch during movie marathons. I'm not mad at you, sweetheart, I said. I'm not mad at anyone. I'm just learning how to take better care of myself. Does that mean you don't want to see me anymore? The question hit me like a physical blow. This was what I had been afraid of. This was why I had always said yes, always given in, always put everyone else's needs first. Because I was terrified of losing the people I loved most. But I was losing them anyway, wasn't I? I was losing them by inches, by degrees, by becoming so convenient and forgettable that they only remembered I existed when they needed something. Of course I want to see you, I told Emma. You're one of my favorite people in the whole world. But I need your mother to treat me with respect, and that's something between her and me, not between you and me. I miss you, Grandma. I miss you too, baby. More than you know. After we hung up, I sat in my living room and cried. Not the desperate, hopeless tears I had shed so many times over the past few years, but something cleaner. Sadder but also clearer. I was mourning the relationship I had thought I had with my daughter. I was grieving the family I had thought we were. But I was also making space for something new, something healthier, something that might actually last. That weekend, Mrs. Ortiz knocked on my door with a plate of homemade empanadas and a worried expression. Elena, are you okay? I haven't seen you much this week. I invited her in for coffee, and before I knew it, I was telling her everything. About Sarah's canceled birthday dinner and her $2,000 purse. About all the years of giving and getting nothing back. About finally learning to say no. Maria listened without judgment, nodding occasionally, offering small sounds of understanding and sympathy. You know, she said when I finished, I went through something similar with my son Carlos a few years ago. Always asking for money, never asking how I was doing. Always too busy to visit but never too busy to call when he needed something. What did you do? I stopped answering the phone every time he called. I stopped giving him money. I started volunteering at the community center and taking English classes at the library. I made a life for myself that didn't revolve around what he needed from me. Did it work? It took about 6 months, but yes. He started calling just to talk instead of just to ask. He started visiting without needing anything. He started treating me like his mother instead of his bank account. She reached over and patted my hand. Sometimes the people we love most need to learn how to love us back. And sometimes they don't learn until we stop making it so easy for them to take advantage. That night, I made a list. Not a grocery list or a to-do list, but a life list. Things I wanted to do for myself, places I wanted to go, experiences I wanted to have. I wanted to take the art class at the Queens Community House that I had been thinking about for years. I wanted to visit the botanical gardens in the Bronx. I wanted to go to one of those paint and wine nights I saw advertised at the community center. I wanted to buy clothes that fit properly instead of wearing the same faded outfits I had owned for a decade. I wanted to live like I mattered. Because I did matter. I had always mattered. I had just forgotten for a while. Monday morning, I walked to the community center and signed up for the watercolor painting class that started the following week. The instructor was a cheerful woman in her 60s who told me that art was never about talent, only about joy. If it makes you happy, she said, then you're doing it right. When was the last time someone had told me that? When was the last time happiness had been the measure of success instead of usefulness or convenience or how much money I could provide? I couldn't remember. But I was going to learn. On Tuesday, I went to the library and checked out 3 books I had been wanting to read but never had time for because I was always busy doing things for other people. I sat in the reading garden behind the branch library with a cup of coffee from the cafe next door and read for 2 hours straight. It felt revolutionary. On Wednesday, I went shopping for clothes. Not practical clothes, not sensible clothes, but clothes that made me feel attractive. Clothes in colors that made my skin look warm and my eyes look bright. Clothes that fit properly because I bought them in the right size instead of the size I wished I could wear. The saleswoman at the department store helped me pick out a dress for no occasion except that it made me feel beautiful when I looked in the mirror. It was navy blue with small white flowers, and it had 3/4 sleeves that covered my arms without making me feel matronly. You look lovely, the saleswoman said, and she sounded like she meant it. I bought the dress. I bought matching shoes. I bought a scarf that felt soft around my neck and made the whole outfit look coordinated and intentional. When I got home, I hung my purchases in my closet and stood looking at them for a long time. When was the last time I had bought anything just because I liked it? When was the last time I had spent money on something that served no purpose except to make me feel good about myself? I couldn't remember. But I was learning that forgetting wasn't the same as not deserving. On Thursday, Sarah called. Mom, we need to talk. This whole thing has gone on long enough. What whole thing? You being mad at me. You refusing to help with Emma's school fundraiser. You being difficult. Difficult. The word stung because it was so familiar. How many times had I been called difficult when I was really just tired? How many times had my legitimate complaints been dismissed as drama or oversensitivity or getting older? I'm not being difficult, Sarah. I'm being honest. Same thing, apparently. The casual cruelty of that response hit me harder than any elaborate insult could have. This was my daughter, the person I had loved more than anyone else in the world, reducing my feelings to an inconvenience. I want to see Emma, she continued. But I need to know that you're not going to fill her head with ideas about how terrible her mother is. Emma is always welcome here. She's my granddaughter, and I love her. But you're right, we do need to talk. Really talk, not just fight about money. Fine. Saturday afternoon. Emma has a birthday party to go to anyway, so we'll have privacy. Saturday came, and with it, the first real conversation I had attempted to have with my daughter in years. Not a conversation about what she needed or what Emma was doing or what bills were due, but a conversation about us. About our relationship. About what had gone wrong and what might be fixable. She arrived 20 minutes late, which was typical. She came in without knocking, which used to feel natural but now felt presumptuous. She sat down at my kitchen table like she owned it, which I suppose she thought she did. I had been practicing what I wanted to say for days, but when she was actually sitting there in front of me, all my careful words scattered. Sarah, I began. I need you to understand something. I need you to understand that I'm not just your mother. I'm also a person. I'm a woman with feelings and needs and dreams of my own. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Of course you're a person, Mom. Nobody said you weren't. But you treat me like I'm not. You treat me like I exist only to solve your problems and provide for your needs. You talk to me like I'm an employee instead of your mother. You make decisions about my life without consulting me, like postponing my birthday, and then you spend more on a purse than most people spend on rent. That purse was a gift to myself. I work hard, and I deserve nice things. And what about me? Do I work hard? Do I deserve nice things? She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her thinking, weighing her words. You're retired, Mom. You don't work anymore. I raised you. I worked 2 jobs for 15 years to put you through college. I've been taking care of people my entire life. When do I get to be taken care of? We do take care of you. We visit, we call, you call when you need money. You visit when you want something. When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? When was the last time you remembered something I cared about? When was the last time you treated me like someone worth knowing instead of just someone worth using? Her face was changing as I spoke, shifting from defensive to something harder to read. Guilt, maybe. Or anger. Or both. This is exactly what I was talking about, she said finally. You're being dramatic and manipulative. You're trying to make me feel guilty for living my own life. I'm not trying to make you feel anything. I'm trying to make you understand that I feel things too. Mom, I don't have time for this. I have a million things to do, and sitting here listening to you complain about every little slight isn't helping anyone. And there it was. The dismissal I had been expecting, the reduction of my legitimate concerns to complaining, the suggestion that my feelings were a waste of her precious time. I got up from the table and walked to my living room. I picked up the photo album from the coffee table and brought it back to the kitchen. Look at this, I said, opening to a page from Sarah's childhood. Do you remember this day? It was a picture of her 8th birthday party. She was wearing a pink dress with puffy sleeves, and her face was covered in chocolate cake. I was standing behind her, beaming, my hands on her shoulders. Of course I remember. It was at Chuck E. Cheese. Do you remember how excited I was? Do you remember how I spent weeks planning that party, how I saved up for months to pay for it, how important it was to me to make your birthday special? She was looking at the photo but not really seeing it. That's what mothers do, Mom. Yes, it is. It's what mothers do. And it's what daughters do too, when they grow up and their mothers get older and need the same kind of care and attention they once received. I turned the page to another photo, this one from her college graduation. This was one of the proudest days of my life, I said. Watching you walk across that stage, knowing that I had helped make that moment possible. Knowing that all those years of working double shifts and eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner had been worth it. Now Sarah was really looking at the photos, and her expression was softer, more thoughtful. I turned to another page, this time from Emma's birth. And this, I said, pointing to a photo of me holding my granddaughter for the first time. This was the day I fell in love all over again. The day I realized I wasn't just your mother anymore, I was Emma's grandmother, and that was a gift I never expected to receive. I closed the album and set it on the table between us. I have loved you with everything I have for 46 years, I said. I have put your needs before my own, your happiness before my own, your security before my own. I have never asked for anything in return except to be treated with basic respect and consideration. And lately, I haven't even been getting that. Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller, less certain. I don't know how to do this, Mom. I don't know how to be a daughter to someone who doesn't need me anymore. The honesty in that statement caught me off guard. For the first time in our conversation, she sounded vulnerable instead of defensive. But I do need you, I said. I need you to care about my feelings. I need you to call sometimes just to see how I'm doing. I need you to remember that I have a life outside of what I can do for you. I need you to treat me like I matter. You do matter. Then act like it. Include me in family decisions instead of just informing me after the fact. Ask me about my day, my health, my interests. Remember my birthday without being reminded. Spend time with me when you don't need anything from me. And if I do those things, you'll go back to helping us when we need it? The question revealed everything that was wrong with our dynamic. Even in this moment of potential understanding, she was still thinking in terms of what she could get from me. Sarah, I said gently, this isn't a negotiation. This isn't about earning your way back into my good graces so you can keep taking advantage. This is about building a real relationship based on mutual respect and care. I do care about you, Mom. I know you do. But caring isn't enough anymore. I need you to show it in ways that don't involve me giving you money or solving your problems or making your life easier. I need you to show it by making my life matter to you. She was crying now, not the angry tears of someone who feels attacked, but the confused tears of someone who is seeing something clearly for the first time. I don't know where to start, she said. Start by asking me how I am and then listening to the answer. Start by telling me about your life without asking me to fix anything in it. Start by spending time with me because you want to, not because you need to. We talked for another hour, and it wasn't easy. There were moments when she became defensive again, moments when I had to fight the urge to back down and apologize and pretend everything was fine. But there were also moments of real connection, real understanding, real hope. When she left, she hugged me for the first time in months. Not the perfunctory hug of social obligation, but the kind of hug that says, I see you and I love you. I'll call you Tuesday, she said. Just to talk. Not to ask for anything. I'd like that. After she left, I sat in my kitchen feeling emotionally exhausted but also strangely hopeful. We had a long way to go, but for the first time in years, it felt like we were going in the right direction. That night, I put on my new navy dress and went to dinner by myself at the Italian restaurant on Steinway Street that I had always wanted to try but never had because it seemed too expensive or too fancy for a woman alone. The hostess seated me at a small table by the window, and I ordered the osso buco and a glass of red wine. The food was delicious, the wine was smooth, and the other diners were friendly when I caught their eyes and smiled. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged in the world again. Not as someone's mother or someone's resource, but as myself. As Elena. As a woman worth knowing, worth celebrating, worth taking to dinner. Even if the person taking me was me. The next few weeks passed differently than any weeks had in recent memory. Sarah did call on Tuesday, just to talk, and we had a conversation about books and weather and neighborhood news that was refreshingly normal. She called again on Friday and asked if I wanted to have lunch together on Sunday, just the two of us. I said yes, but I also made sure she understood that I already had plans on Saturday, my first watercolor painting class, and couldn't change them. "That's great, Mom," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. "I'm glad you're doing something fun for yourself." The painting class turned out to be exactly what I needed. There were 12 students, all women between the ages of 60 and 80, all looking for something new to fill their time and feed their souls. The instructor, Mrs. Chen, was patient and encouraging, and she made it clear from the first day that there were no mistakes in art, only happy accidents. My first painting was a disaster, a muddy mess that was supposed to be a sunset but looked more like a bruise. But I loved every minute of creating it. I loved the feel of the brush in my hand, the way the colors blended and surprised me, the meditative focus required to translate what I saw in my mind onto the paper. Art is about expression, not perfection, Mrs. Chen told us. The goal is not to create something beautiful for others to admire, but to create something meaningful for yourself to cherish. I thought about that as I painted. About expression and meaning and the difference between creating something for others and creating something for yourself. About all the years I had spent trying to be perfect for everyone else and never giving myself permission to be messy, experimental, authentically human. By the end of the class, my sunset still looked like a bruise, but it was my bruise. It was my attempt, my effort, my small act of rebellion against the voice in my head that said I wasn't artistic enough or talented enough or deserving enough to try. I hung that painting on my refrigerator when I got home, right next to the calendar where my birthday was still circled in red. It made me smile every time I saw it. The lunch with Sarah went better than I had expected. She arrived on time, which was unusual, and she seemed genuinely interested in hearing about my painting class and my art teacher and the other women in the group. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said over our salads. "For trying something new, for taking care of yourself. I know I haven't been very supportive of that in the past." It wasn't a complete apology, but it was acknowledgement, and that felt like progress. She also brought up my birthday, which was still a month away. "I want to make up for canceling your party," she said. "What would you like to do? Where would you like to go? I want to make it special." The old me would have said it didn't matter, that she didn't need to make a fuss, that I was just happy to spend time with her. The new me considered what I actually wanted. "I'd like to go to the botanical gardens," I said. "I've always wanted to see them in the fall when the leaves are changing. And afterwards, maybe we could have dinner somewhere nice. Somewhere with cloth napkins and candles on the tables." "Done," she said, without hesitation or complaint about the expense. "And I'll ask Dad's sister if she wants to join us. I know Aunt Margaret always liked you, and I think she'd enjoy the gardens too." Margaret was Sarah's deceased father's sister, a woman I had always gotten along with but rarely saw anymore. The suggestion that Sarah would think to include her, that she was considering my social needs and not just the minimal family obligation, felt like another small step forward. "I'd like that very much," I said. We spent another hour talking, and for the first time in months, it felt like a conversation between two adults who enjoyed each other's company rather than a transaction between someone who needed and someone who provided. When we parted ways, she hugged me again, and this time she said, "I love you, Mom. Not because of what you do for me, but because of who you are." I cried a little bit on the bus ride home, but they were good tears. Tears of relief and hope and the strange joy that comes from being seen by someone who has overlooked you for too long. October came, and with it, my birthday week. For the first time in years, I was actually looking forward to the day instead of dreading its approach and inevitable disappointment. Sarah called me 3 days before to confirm our plans and to tell me that she had also invited Emma to join us for dinner, if that was okay with me. "She's been asking about you a lot," Sarah said. "She misses spending time with her grandmother." "I miss her too." "Of course she can come." "Good. And Mom?" "I'm sorry it took me so long to figure out how to be a better daughter." "I'm working on it." "We're both working on it," I said. "That's all we can do." My birthday fell on a Thursday, and I spent the morning the way I had spent most of my mornings that month, with coffee and a book in the reading garden behind the library, followed by a stop at the community center to work on a new watercolor painting. This one was better than my first attempt. It was a street scene from my neighborhood, the Greek deli, the bus stop, the small playground where children played while their grandparents watched from benches. It wasn't sophisticated or technically perfect, but it captured something true about the place I lived and the life I was building for myself. Mrs. Chen looked at it during class and nodded approvingly. "You're learning to see," she said. "That's the hardest part of art, learning to really look at the world around you instead of just glancing at it." I thought about that on my walk home. About learning to see, about the difference between looking and glancing, about all the things I had been glancing at instead of truly seeing. Had I been glancing at Sarah instead of seeing her? Had I been so focused on her needs and demands that I had missed her own struggles and insecurities? Had I been so hurt by her treatment of me that I had failed to recognize that she might be acting out of her own fear and confusion rather than simple selfishness? The questions didn't excuse her behavior, but they did help me understand it. And understanding, I was learning, was different from accepting or enabling. I could have compassion for Sarah's journey while still maintaining boundaries about my own. That evening, Sarah called to wish me happy birthday. "How does it feel to be 74? She asked. "It feels like a beginning," I said, and realized as I said it that it was true. Saturday arrived bright and clear, perfect weather for the botanical gardens. Sarah picked me up at 10 in the morning, and she was wearing a dress I had never seen before, something tasteful and elegant that made her look more mature, more thoughtful. Emma was in the car too, bouncing with excitement about our adventure. At 12 years old, she was caught between childhood and adolescence, still young enough to hold my hand but old enough to ask thoughtful questions about the plants and trees we saw. The gardens were spectacular. The fall foliage was at its peak, brilliant reds and oranges and golds that made the whole world look like it was on fire in the most beautiful way. We walked slowly along the winding paths, stopping frequently to admire particular trees or flowers or views. Sarah took pictures of me and Emma together, and I took pictures of the three of us, and we asked other visitors to take pictures of all of us together. It felt like the kind of family outing I had been dreaming of for years, relaxed, joyful, focused on enjoying each other's company rather than accomplishing tasks or meeting obligations. "Grandma, look at this one," Emma kept saying, pointing out different plants and flowers that caught her attention. "Do you know what kind it is? Do you think it would grow in your neighborhood?" I didn't know the answers to most of her questions, but I promised to help her look them up when we got home. It felt good to be needed for something other than money, to be asked for knowledge and companionship instead of solutions and support. Aunt Margaret met us at the Gardens restaurant for lunch, and it was wonderful to see her again. She was 78 now, sharp as ever, with stories about her recent trip to Ireland and her volunteer work at the animal shelter. "Elena, you look wonderful," she said when she saw me. "There's something different about you. You seem lighter somehow." "I feel lighter," I said. "I'm learning how to live for myself instead of just for everyone else." "Good for you. It's never too late to start putting yourself first." I didn't learn that lesson until I was 80, and I wish I had learned it sooner. We had a lovely lunch together, the 4 generations of women sharing stories and laughter and the kind of easy conversation that makes you lose track of time. Sarah was attentive and engaged, asking Margaret about her travels and asking me about my art classes, including me in the conversation instead of talking around me. After lunch, we walked through more of the gardens, and then Sarah drove me home to rest before dinner. "Thank you," I told her as I got out of the car. "This has been a perfect birthday so far." "It's not over yet," she said, smiling. "Dinner is at 7. I made reservations at that French place on Austin Street that you mentioned wanting to try." The French restaurant was small and intimate, with white tablecloths and actual crystal glasses and servers who acted like our presence was a pleasure rather than a burden. Sarah had clearly chosen it carefully, and I could tell she was nervous about whether I would like it. I loved everything about it. The soft lighting that made everyone look beautiful. The menu full of dishes I had heard of but never tried. The wine list that Sarah navigated confidently, ordering a bottle of something white and crisp that paired perfectly with our appetizers. Emma was on her best behavior, trying new foods and asking polite questions about the preparation and ingredients. Sarah was relaxed and funny, telling stories about her work and her friends that made me laugh until my sides hurt. For dessert, they brought me a small chocolate cake with a single candle, and all 3 of them sang happy birthday while the other diners smiled and applauded. It was simple and perfect and everything I had wanted for so many years but never known how to ask for. "Make a wish, Grandma," Emma said. I closed my eyes and thought about what I wanted most in the world. Not money or perfect health or a different past, but the continuation of this feeling, this sense of being valued and included and loved for who I was rather than what I could provide. I wished for more days like this one, more conversations like the ones we had shared, more opportunities to be a grandmother and mother instead of just a source of emergency funds. I blew out the candle, and everyone cheered. After dinner, Sarah drove me home and walked me to my door. "Mom," she said before I went inside, "I know I have a lot of making up to do. I know I've been a terrible daughter in a lot of ways. But I want you to know that I'm trying to do better. This isn't just guilt or obligation. I genuinely want to have a real relationship with you. We're building one, I said. It takes time, but we're getting there. I love you. I love you too. I went inside and put on my nightgown and made myself a cup of tea, and I sat in my living room looking at the photos from the day that Sarah had already sent to my phone. Pictures of me smiling, of Emma laughing, of all of us together looking like the family I had always hoped we could be. It had been the best birthday I'd had in years. Not because it was expensive or elaborate, but because it was thoughtful. Because I felt seen and celebrated and genuinely loved. But even as I savored the day's happiness, I knew this was just the beginning. One good day didn't undo years of hurt and neglect. One birthday celebration didn't automatically repair a damaged relationship. Sarah and I still had work to do. She still had patterns to break and habits to change. I still had boundaries to maintain and expectations to communicate. We both had to learn new ways of being with each other, new ways of showing love that didn't involve financial transactions or crisis management. But for the first time in years, it felt possible. It felt like something we could actually achieve if we both kept trying. I went to bed that night feeling hopeful about the future in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. The weeks that followed my birthday were different from any weeks in recent memory. Sarah called regularly, not to ask for money but to check in, to share news about her day, to ask about mine. She invited me to Emma's school play and actually showed up to pick me up on time. She suggested meeting for lunch or coffee just to spend time together. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when she slipped back into old patterns, still times when she seemed impatient with my stories or dismissive of my concerns. But the overall trajectory was positive. She was trying, and that effort was evident in small ways every day. Emma started spending Saturday afternoons with me again, the way she used to when she was younger. We would work on art projects together. She loved watercolors as much as I did, or bake cookies or just sit and talk about her friends and her school and her dreams for the future. During one of these visits, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Grandma, were you lonely before?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Before Mom started being nicer to you. Were you lonely?" The question was so perceptive, so direct, that I had to think carefully about how to answer it honestly without burdening her with adult problems. "Yes," I said finally. "I was lonely sometimes. Not because I was alone, but because I felt like the people I loved didn't really see me anymore." "I saw you," she said. "I always saw you." "I know you did, baby. And that meant everything to me. I'm glad Mom sees you now too." "Me too." That conversation stayed with me for days. The simplicity of it, the clarity of a 12-year-old's perspective on relationships and love and what it means to see someone truly. Emma had always seen me. Even when her mother had stopped, even when I had felt most invisible and forgotten, my granddaughter had continued to value my presence in her life. That consistency, that unwavering affection, had been more important than I had fully recognized. As November turned into December, I found myself looking forward to the holidays in a way I hadn't for years. Instead of dreading the forced family gatherings or the solitary meals, I was excited about the possibility of creating new traditions, new memories, new ways of being together that felt authentic and joyful. Sarah and I were planning Christmas dinner together, actually planning it instead of her just announcing what was going to happen. We discussed menus and guest lists and decorations, and she asked for my opinions and preferences instead of just assuming I would go along with whatever she decided. "I want this to be special for you, Mom," she said during one of our planning conversations. "I want you to feel like Christmas is something that's happening with you, not just something that's happening to you." The distinction was important, and I was grateful that she understood it. We decided on a small gathering, just Sarah, her husband, Emma, Aunt Margaret, and me. A manageable number of people, all of whom genuinely wanted to be there and to celebrate together. I offered to make my famous apple pie, the ones I used to make every Christmas when Sarah was growing up. She accepted enthusiastically, and I realized it had been 5 years since anyone had specifically requested my baking or made space for my contributions to the meal. As I shopped for ingredients and prepared my kitchen for the elaborate process of making pies from scratch, I felt a familiar sense of purpose and anticipation. Not the anxious, overwhelming sense of obligation I had felt during the years when I was doing everything myself, but the pleasant excitement of contributing something meaningful to a celebration I was genuinely looking forward to. I made 3 pies, apple, pumpkin, and pecan, because I was feeling generous and because I had rediscovered the joy of cooking for people who would appreciate the effort and not just consume the results without comment. Christmas Eve arrived, and with it, a light snow that made the whole city look magical. I put on my navy blue dress, the one I had bought for myself months earlier, and added Margaret's pearl necklace, which she had given me years ago but I had never felt fancy enough to wear. When Sarah picked me up, she looked at me and smiled. "Mom, you look beautiful. That dress is perfect on you." It was such a simple compliment, but it meant the world to me. When was the last time my daughter had noticed what I was wearing, much less told me I looked nice? Dinner was everything I had hoped it would be. The food was delicious, the conversation was lively, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to be there. Emma had made place cards for the table, complete with little drawings of each person, and she had seated herself between Margaret and me so she could talk to both of us easily. Sarah's husband, who had always been polite but distant with me, made an effort to include me in conversations about current events and neighborhood news. He asked thoughtful questions about my art classes and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. Margaret brought photo albums from her recent travels and regaled us with stories about Irish castles and Scottish highlands. She was a natural storyteller, and listening to her adventures made me think about whether I might want to travel myself someday. When it came time for dessert, everyone made a fuss over my pies. They praised the flaky crust, the perfect spicing, the way the apple filling was sweet but not too sweet. It felt good to be appreciated for something I had created, something that required skill and care and attention to detail. "These are the best pies I've ever had, Grandma," Emma said, and I knew she meant it. After dinner, we sat in the living room with coffee and continued to talk and laugh until well past Emma's usual bedtime. Nobody seemed to want the evening to end, and for the first time in years, neither did I. When Sarah drove me home that night, we sat in her car outside my building for a few minutes before I got out. "Thank you," I said. "For tonight, for these past few months, for trying to make things better between us. Thank you for not giving up on me," she said. "For holding me accountable but not writing me off. I know I didn't deserve your patience, but I'm grateful for it. You're my daughter. I will always love you. But I'm proud of us for learning how to love each other better." "Me too." I went upstairs to my apartment and sat in my living room, still wearing my navy dress and Margaret's pearls, still tasting apple pie and still hearing Emma's laughter in my ears. It had been a perfect Christmas Eve. Not perfect because nothing went wrong, but perfect because everything felt right. Because I had felt included and valued and genuinely loved. As the new year approached, I found myself reflecting not just on the changes in my relationship with Sarah, but on the changes in myself. The woman who had sat in her kitchen 6 months ago, heartbroken over a cancelled birthday and a $2,000 purse, felt like a different person from the woman I was now. I had learned to value myself. I had learned to set boundaries. I had learned to say no when saying yes would compromise my dignity or well-being. I had learned to spend money on myself without guilt, to pursue my own interests without apology, to take up space in my own life instead of making myself smaller to accommodate everyone else's needs. But most importantly, I had learned that transformation is possible at any age. That it's never too late to change the patterns that aren't serving you, to demand better treatment from the people you love, to create the life you want instead of just accepting the life you have. The changes hadn't been easy. There had been uncomfortable conversations, tense moments, periods of uncertainty when I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing or just being selfish. There had been times when I missed the simplicity of being needed, even if I wasn't respected. Times when I wondered if standing up for myself was worth the risk of alienating the people I loved most. But every time I doubted myself, I would think about that navy blue dress hanging in my closet, about the watercolor paintings growing in a stack on my desk, about the Saturday afternoons with Emma that were mine to enjoy without guilt or obligation. I would think about the woman in the mirror who looked back at me now, still 74 years old, still lined and weathered by 7 decades of living, but no longer invisible. No longer apologetic about taking up space in the world. No longer willing to accept crumbs when she deserved a seat at the table. That woman was someone I was proud to be. Someone I was still learning to become. On New Year's Eve, I did something I had never done before. I went to the community center's New Year's party, where Mrs. Chen from my art class had invited me to join a table of other women from various programs and activities. I wore my navy dress again, and Margaret's pearls, and lipstick the color of confidence. I stayed until midnight, dancing to old songs and laughing at new jokes and making toasts to friendship and possibility and the year ahead. When the clock struck 12, I kissed the cheek of the woman next to me, a stranger who had become a friend over the course of one evening, and I made a resolution. This year, I would continue to choose myself. Not selfishly, not at the expense of the people I loved, but consistently and unapologetically. I would continue to nurture the relationship with Sarah that we were still building, but I would not sacrifice my own well-being for her convenience. I would continue to be the grandmother Emma deserved, but I would not let fear of losing her keep me from maintaining healthy boundaries with her mother. I would continue taking art classes, continue reading books for pleasure, continue wearing clothes that made me feel beautiful, continue spending money on experiences that brought me joy. I would continue to live like I mattered, because I did matter. I had always mattered. I had just forgotten for a while. As I rode the bus home that night, looking out at the city lights and thinking about the year behind me and the year ahead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in longer than I could remember. Peace. Not the peace of resignation or exhaustion, but the peace of alignment. The peace of living in harmony with my own values and needs and dreams. The peace of knowing that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing, becoming exactly who I was supposed to become. It had taken me 74 years to learn how to put myself first, but better late than never. Better now than never. The bus pulled up to my stop, and I gathered my purse and my coat and stepped out into the cold January air. Above me, my apartment windows glowed warm and welcoming, ready to welcome me home to myself. I climbed the stairs to my door, put my key in the lock, and stepped inside to begin another year of living like I mattered. Because I do. 3 months later, as I sit here telling you this story, I can honestly say that my life has transformed in ways I never thought possible. Sarah and I have built a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than obligation and financial dependency. Emma and I spend time together regularly, not because she has to visit her grandmother but because she wants to spend time with someone who sees and values her completely. I have friends now, women from my art class and the community center who invite me to movies and lunch dates and birthday celebrations. I have hobbies that bring me joy. I have a savings account that I'm not constantly depleting to solve other people's problems. I have a life that belongs to me. The apartment that once felt like a waiting room now feels like a home. The mirror that once reflected back someone I barely recognized now shows me a woman I'm proud to know. The phone that used to ring only when someone needed something now rings with invitations and check-ins and conversations that exist for their own sake. I'm not telling you this story to boast about my transformation or to pretend that standing up for yourself is easy or without consequences. I'm telling you this story because I want you to know that it's possible. That change is possible at any age, in any situation, no matter how long you've been accepting less than you deserve. I'm telling you this story because I want you to know that you matter. That your needs are valid, your feelings are legitimate, your dreams are worth pursuing. That you don't have to earn love by making yourself indispensable, and you don't have to accept disrespect in exchange for company. I'm telling you this story because I want you to know that it's never too late to choose yourself. The woman who let her daughter postpone her birthday to save money while spending $2,000 on a purse was not weak or foolish or deserving of poor treatment. She was someone who had forgotten her own worth, who had confused being needed with being loved, who had lost herself in the process of trying to hold everyone else together. But she was also someone with the strength to recognize that things needed to change and the courage to change them. Someone who could look in the mirror and decide to start over. Someone who could learn new ways of being in the world at 74 years old. That woman was me. And if any part of her story sounds familiar to you, if you've ever felt invisible or taken for granted or valued only for what you can provide, I want you to know that her story doesn't have to be your story. You can write a different ending. You can choose yourself. You can set boundaries. You can demand respect. You can build a life that belongs to you instead of everyone else. It won't be easy. There will be people who resist your changes, who prefer you small and accommodating and available for their convenience. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you wonder if you're being selfish or ungrateful or too demanding. But there will also be moments when you feel the deep satisfaction of living in alignment with your values. When you see yourself clearly in the mirror and like what you see. When you realize that you've become the person you needed all along. Those moments make everything else worthwhile. Have you ever lived something similar to what I've shared tonight? Has someone in your family or circle of friends ever treated you like I was treated, valued for what you could give but not for who you are? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to tell our truth and let others know they're not alone. If this story resonated with you, if it gave you something to think about or helped you feel less alone in your own struggles, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. When we share these stories, when we open our hearts and speak our truths, we create space for others to do the same. And remember, no matter how old you are, no matter how long you've been accepting less than you deserve, it's never too late to start treating yourself with the love and respect you've been giving everyone else. You matter. Your needs matter. Your happiness matters. Choose yourself. You're worth it.